a will, a hope immense now seized his heart, and to discern the superhuman's form, he raised his eyes to unseen spiritual heights, aspiring to bring down a greater world.
Good morning. We're reading in Book 1, Canto 5. We've come to page 87 at the break. So we're reading now the third canto about King Aswapati and his tremendous spiritual realizations. And in this Canto 5, just a few of the lines that the mother was just reading give us a sense of kind of the stage in which he's come. I'll just reread a few of those lines. A will, a hope immense now seized his heart, and to discern the superhuman's form, he raised his eyes to unseen spiritual heights, aspiring to bring down a greater world. So his spiritual realization has come from a personal realization to a more universal realization in which he wants to bring that down on earth for humanity. And just in the beginning of the previous section on page 83, we see, again, kind of in a personal sense, all was uncovered to his sealless eye, a secret nature stripped of her defense, once in a dreaded half-light formidable, overtaken in her mighty privacy, laid bare to the burning splendor of his will. So we have seen kind of a play between the soul and nature, and now he has kind of taken this higher nature, the Shakti, into his hands and is able to kind of take command and control over those forces, those higher divine forces. So as we come now to this next section on page 87, we'll see a little more of that divine force in which is coming into his realm, into his hands. And he gives some more description of that, of her, and a little bit more of just the realm in which he stands now. So maybe we be page 87, 87 at the break. So Turya, would you like to begin? Thank you. Let's pause. Yeah. It sounds that way, yes. It sounds like that, yes. She's depicted that way, I think, right, with the lions at her feet. But here Sri Aurobindo seems to be placing this divine force at kind of a borderline between the unknowable and the creation. He puts her as a border sovereign. So she's in command at this borderline, I think, between the transcendent or the absolute and the creation. And she's in charge of that creation. She's the sovereign. And she's a threshold guardian of the earth scenes beyond. So she stands there as a guardian to the beyond. And she has canalized the outbreaks of the gods. So the divine forces that are coming from the transcendent, she canalizes, she harnesses them and puts them into specific channels and grooves. And cut through vistas of intuitive sight a long road of shimmering discoveries. In our upward ascension, as we approach the absolute, she has given for us these roads of discovery, these paths of discovery, vistas of intuitive sight, in which we can begin to approach and comprehend the absolute. And kind of standing behind her are these worlds of a marvelous unknown. Their presences can be felt. And her reign received their mystic influences. So her reign, her sovereign control over the creation is receiving the influences from beyond. And their forces then are crouching beneath her feet. This image of Durga. And the future sleeps unknown behind their doors. So what's not yet manifested is there behind these doors in the transcendent beyond, unmanifest, but waiting for manifestation. Nika, would you think? Thank you. Begins here with this kind of paradoxical idea as he's approaching the border of the unseen, the unmanifest, these abysms, infernal, deep round the soul steps. So even here, these kind of hellish deeps of creation are seen, are there, and calling all to its mounting vision peaks divine. So even there they seem to be tempting, alluring the climbing soul to turn towards these realms of the infernal. There tirelessly tempted, the explorer mind and countless voices visited the charmed ear. 1,000,000 figures passed and were seen no more. So it's as if maybe all these kinds of beings he's seeing as he climbs towards the transcendent, calling him, alluring him, tempting him. But then they pass, ephemeral visions. And then again, we're given this image of this borderline of the occult force. This was a forefront of God's thousandfold house, beginnings of the half-screened invisible. So it's like the porch, the front porch of the absolute. And the beginning of the half-screened invisible. It's almost as if you can kind of see the divine absolute behind the screen, but it's just half visible at the border. A magic porch of entry, glimmering, quivered in a penumbra of screened light. Penumbra is like the light that surrounds an eclipse, kind of fuzzy light on the outskirts. And this is like a court of the mystical traffic of the worlds, a balcony, and a miraculous facade. Facade is the front of a building. But it maybe carries kind of a secondary meaning of this kind of an artificial appearance on the outside of things. Use facade in that sense also. But we see that at this borderline, again, it seems, there is the one standing behind, but the front is like this thousandfold house. It's full of all different possibilities, including this infernal abysms that are gaping round his feet. Seems as if all possibilities are expressed there. Wanandi, above her light. So again, at this borderline between the absolute and the creation, where the Divine Mother here stands. Above her, light and high immensities that beyond lightening, and all the unknown looked out from boundlessness, as if the Absolute is looking out on the creation, lodged upon an edge of hourless time, gazing out of some everlasting now, its shadows gleaming with the birth of gods, its bodies signaling the bodiless, and the bodies there are showing something of the bodiless absolute. The bodiless, yeah, that's the unmanifest. Behind, above this transcendence is the bodiless. It's unmanifested. But here at this borderline, there are these bodies, but they're signaling, they're somehow almost reflecting or expressing that bodiless. And even at this point, it seems as if the gods are taking birth, perhaps taking form out of the unmanifest. Its shadows, you mean? Or it lodged? Yeah, all the unknown, I suppose. So it's referring to this absolute, as if it's gazing out into the manifest. But these beings here, these gods taking birth, very special. Their foreheads glowing, the oversoul, its forms projected from the unknowable, its eyes dreaming of the ineffable, its faces staring into eternity. This seems to be some realm of the overmind. And then he kind of returns to these abysms, infernal abysms that he referred to earlier. Life in him learned its huge subconscient rear. So also these kind of unconscious gulfs are being lit up by this light. The little fronts unlocked to the unseen vast. Her gulfs stood nude. and her far transcendences, flamed in transparencies of crowded light. Yeah, I think that he's seeing way down deep into the subconscious. All of that is getting lit up, and he's also seeing up towards the transcendence. The whole realm of cosmic nature is opening up to his sight and vision and control. Bottom to the top. Helmut, would you like? Thank you. So on this borderline, he discovers kind of a knowledge, understanding of the creation. It all takes a kind of a luminous form in his consciousness. So he discovers a giant order, of which the tassel and extended fringe are the scant stuff of our material lives. So it suggests even our material lives, there are kind of part of that knowledge, understood in that knowledge. And here, this overt universe in which we live and experience, whose figures hide the secrets merged in superconscient light. So here, this universe, its secrets are not seen here, but there they are found in that superconscient light. There they reveal themselves. He wrote clear the letters of its glowing code. It almost seems as if he's kind of getting a symbolic knowledge or representation of all the secrets of manifestation of the world. And that image of the Vedas, I mean, it's, I think, appropriate here in the sense that there it's also kind of a symbolic language representing the truth. And it's represented in these mantric verses, which are also vibrations or words that are coming out of the truth, out of the absolute. So they're expressed from the absolute, revealing something of the absolute within them through these symbolic images and representations of language. So here too, he's seeing a map of subtle signs surpassing thought, hung upon a wall of inmost mind. So he's also getting a kind of a symbolic knowledge or representation of things, seeing that there. But these symbols are fully expressive of the truth in which they are symbolizing. Something of that truth, is felt, seen through the symbols. Shall we continue? Yeah. I think we're at illumining the world's concrete. Thank you. So this first sentence is again kind of including that previous thought of the symbolic images, illumining the world's concrete images into significant symbols by its gloss. Gloss here is an interpretation or explanation, like we have the word glossary, which gives the explanation of terms. It offered to the intuitive exegete. And again, exegete is one who explains or critically interprets a text. But this is an intuitive exegete, not just the intellectual, mental exegete. It's reflex of the eternal mystery. The reflex here, it's kind of reflected back upon the mind. And then we have this kind of beautiful image of these ascending and descending kingdoms, worlds, ascending and descending twixt life's poles. The upper poles bordering on the absolute and the lower poles of the inconscient. The serried kingdoms of the graded law. Kingdoms all kind of lined up in a series, each with their own law, specific law to that realm, that stage. Plunged from the everlasting into time. So it plunges from above, down, towards the inconscient, creating all of these worlds in that plunge. Then, glad of a glory of multitudinous mind, and rich with life's adventure and delight, and packed with the beauty of matter's shapes and hues, climbed back from time into undying self. Up a golden ladder, carrying the soul, tying with diamond threads the spirit's extremes. Exegete is one who interprets. Typically, it's used as somebody who interprets a text, explains a difficult, complicated text or a scripture. Yeah, reflex. Yeah, it's like a reflection. It's a turning back upon the mind. So these images are, in a sense, reflecting that eternal mystery upon the mind. Or the overmind, whatever. that mother's force. Yeah, he's imaging this idea of involution and evolution. But he gives also kind of a sense of the significance and meaning of it all. Because in that plunge, then it discovers all of these possibilities that are not there, rich with life's adventure and delight, packed with the beauty of matter's shapes and hues. So it becomes full of all these possibilities through the manifestation that weren't there before. Yeah, the Leela, play of the divine. He doesn't, he's not using any pronoun here, but I mean, earlier he was talking about this border sovereign force. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in the beginning here, he's talking about this realm. He's not defining it to any person. So he's saying it offered to the exegete. He's talking about this realm. It's, yeah, I mean, he's at this borderline with the mother, and he's experiencing these symbolic representations of the manifestation that is embodying, in some sense, the mystery beyond. And so through those symbols, the secrets of existence are getting reflected in his consciousness. Okay. So the soul does descend in this process and then climbs back up. But yeah, up a golden ladder carrying the soul. Yeah. But I would say, I mean, it would seem to me it's this sovereign force at the borderline. She is in control of this whole process. That was how it began. So, E, would you like to continue? E? E, would you continue? In this drop, thank you. Golden Bridge. Yeah, it's similar, except here they're kind of emphasizing these different stages, different steps along the way. But he has a couple of very interesting revelations here, that in this drop from consciousness to consciousness, down each of these steps in the involutionary process, each step is leaning on the occult inconscience power, the fountain of its needed ignorance, archmason of the limits by which it lives. Yeah. The source, the spring, the source. Source. It's receiving from the inconscient the power of limitation. so that it can take its particular form on the ladder, on that stage of evolution or involution. So it lives within certain limits, but it draws the power of limitation from the inconscient, which is kind of in a way, a total limitation, where all the light and consciousness is involved there, concentrated within itself, limiting itself completely. Yeah. Uh-huh. Mm. Okay. Yeah, that's another way of looking at it from the individual angle versus kind of a more universal angle, which the whole world at that particular level is getting limited. But it's true at the individual level as well. And then, so he talks about in this drop from consciousness to consciousness, and then in this soar from consciousness to consciousness. He repeats these terms. So this is the evolutionary process, going up the ladder. Yeah, needed ignorance. The fountain of its needed ignorance. Because each step in the descent is ignorant of the complete wholeness, of the oneness, of the unmanifest divine. So in order to take kind of form at that particular level, it needs some ignorance. No? But ignorance is just, it's kind of defining, walling off itself from the wider being, from the wider knowledge. Yeah. And each step, let me just finish this one thought. Each step is lifting tops to that from which it came. Lifted tops. So the tops of that particular level also reach up. This is how I would interpret it. Reach up to that, to the absolute. Shraddhavan interpreted it a little bit differently in her book, and she seemed to refer to it that it was lifting tops to the next step. But I think when he capitalizes that here, it suggests they're lifting tops up to the absolute. And if we think of, well, as we explore Asupati's journey in the next book, I mean, we have, like in the worlds of life, there are heavens of the life worlds that are seeming to reach up towards the divine. And in the mind worlds, also reaching up. And even in the physical, in the subtle physical, there are kind of the divine, almost kind of embodiments that are there. So I think each level, physical, vital, mental, has certain, climbs up towards the supreme at its own level. Origin of all that it had ever been, and home of all that it could still become. And then he gives kind of an image here of this organ scale, if playing on an organ, a scale of notes, an organ scale of the Eternal's act, mounting to their climax in an endless calm. Cases of the many-visaged wonderful, predestined stadia of the evolving way. Here, stadia, Shraddhavan kind of defined as a stage of development. A stage of development. Predestined stadia. So, yeah, predestined steps along the way of the evolving way. They were fixed on the way down. The involution, it created these different steps. And now on the ascent also, we take those steps. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Mm. They're predestined by what? The soul? So the soul is predestining. Mm. Mm. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Because he's also referring to the growing soul here. Measures of the stature of the growing soul. They interpreted existence to itself and mediating twixt the heights and deeps, united the veiled married opposites, and linked creation to the ineffable. So I think he's talking about these different stages. This ladder, in a sense, is linking the creation to the ineffable. There are always many ways to interpret these lines, and you know, we can always bring it back to Auroville or our own personal life. Patricia, would you continue? Thank you. So it seems he's coming to the top of the ladder. He discovers this last high world where all worlds meet. And in its summit gleam where night is not, nor sleep, no ignorance is there, darkness. The light began of the Trinity Supreme. We must, I would assume, this Satchidananda I think so. So the light of Satchidananda is there. This may not be Satchidananda itself. All there discovered what it seeks for here. Now there's a unity there. All worlds are meeting, but it's meeting in a unification. All is getting reconciled. Freed the finite into boundlessness and rose to its own eternity. The inconscient found its part of consciousness. So even it seems the inconscient is getting lit, enlightened. The idea and feeling groping ignorance at last clutched passionately the body of truth. Mind and life, idea and feeling are also finding their fulfillment. And the music born in matter's silences, plucked, nude out of the ineffable's fathomlessness, the meaning it had held, but could not voice. Perfect rhythm now, only sometimes dreamed. An answer brought to the torn earth's hungry need, rending the night that had concealed the unknown, giving to her her lost, forgotten soul. A grand solution closed the long impasse in which the heights of mortal effort end. Mm. Yeah, we can take that in this kind of personal, individual way as well. We also have to discover that light within our own inconscience, our own unconsciousness. But here he's talking about this world at the heights of this ladder, this highest world, where all is reconciled. And you could say spirit and matter are reconciled with one another. So even the inconscient is conscious there. Matter, let's say, form, it's fully conscious. And that is what Sri Aurobindo envisaged for our world also, right? The supramental transformation, that the form would be conscious, body would be conscious. Yeah, it's very high kind of expression here. It's difficult to say, but matter silences. I mean, matter is silent, and yet music is born out of it. But here in this world, so here he seems to be referring to the idea that the body is expressive of the truth there in that world and in our world when it becomes transformed, when the supramental transformation comes. So then what's all hidden within matter will come out. It will be able to voice it, be able to express itself. It can't really do fully now. It's there hidden within, but it has to come out. And in this world, it has come out, what he is seeing. Oh. The body. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, anyway, the matter here in this world is expressive of the divine. Just like mind and life, thought and feeling find their fulfillment, the body also, the physical also finds its fulfillment. It's divine fulfillment. It's conscious, it's able to express fully what it wants to express. Well, I see the inconscient as the base, the, the, the bottom, the foundation in which no knowledge, no consciousness is expressed. But ignorance, there's a partial expression. So it's the inconscient waking up. So in the early stages, it's a gradual. So the ignorance reaches from that inconscient level all the way up until you reach the knowledge, the knowledge of oneness. So all of that is a kind of part of the ignorance. The ignorance is that whole range, that whole ladder between the inconscient and the superconscient. I think we stopped.
A will, a hope immense now seized his heart, and to discern the superhuman's form He raised his eyes to unseen spiritual heights, aspiring to bring down a greater world.
Thanks to Shri Auroville.